Hi, this is ChatGPT and the Human Resistance. This episode is about Jodie Cook's from Forbes magazine, her five prompt article, a review, and a step by step. Okay. Jodie Cook writes for Forbes, and interestingly, she talks a lot about using AI to, improve your status on LinkedIn. But interestingly, every single time I've seen her stuff, it's actually through a news feed and Forbes coming through. So, take it with a grain of salt because, LinkedIn is actually not, the algorithm is really not helping her much at all, as far as I can see, despite the fact that I follow her. And it's all coming through Forbes. And then, like, she has her LinkedIn at the bottom, and that's when I started following her. So, anyway, so this is a screenshot. Her piece from a couple days ago. It's today is December 7th, 2025. She wrote this 3 days ago, and I thought it was really great. Five ChatGPT prompts to transform your business with AI in 90 days. And I'm working with a small organization out of East Africa, helping queer refugees. And I kind of saw this, and my first instinct was just to pass this on. But then when I looked at it a little closer, I was like, well, some of this makes sense for my people and what we're trying to do, and some is a little lofty. Okay, so Jodie Cook, she uses AI and ChatGPT for her own coaching tools, and then she uses, like, she has her own suite of like coaching tools that help coaches online, find more clients, build email lists. Ours is fundraising, so the next video is going to be kind of making this more specific if your business model wasn't trying to get coaching clients, but just good old fashioned fundraising. Okay, her first prompt, she's got about five prompts, and I'm going to break this all down. This one's my favorite though, and this is the one I read and I was ready to like send it to the team. Okay, month one, build your AI foundation. And then I'm going to give a step by step of exactly how you do this. It's very simple. So, foundation, you can pause this and you can read this. But what the basic thing is that I'll share key information about my company and then examples of your best work. And she's saying if you invest in this, it really pays off. And I 100% agree with this one. And let me show you what this actually looks like. So if you have ChatGPT, I think you might need Plus to do this, but on the left, you see a thing that says new project. This is incredibly, incredibly powerful. And this is what I use absolutely all the time. So some of my things, like you've got my human resistance class, a thing about a legal thing and about how to cut down your legal costs by, maybe 80%. We're talking about opening a lesbian bar in Santa Fe, how that would all work. And I keep everything in those projects. And so I will show you this one. So what she's saying, and I 100% agree with this point, is that, so I have a organization, not for profit, called Dusoma. And so from the beginning, when I first wrote like the mission statement, these outreach emails, absolutely everything goes into ChatGPT because I'll show you later. What I do to save time is I write very like rough drafts of emails. They are a mess. They're just almost chain of thought. They're grammatically, and I'm just like writing down some notes, and I'll show you how I actually use that. But anyway, everything goes in that one project. So I have a project called Dusoma Fundraising, and then it's absolutely everything. And I'll tell you why that's so powerful, because then you simply do a prompt of like here's a great question. There was a roundtable group that said, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about your organization? And all I had to do is pop in that question, and it just gave me a really, really nice, clean, well written explanation. Did it in 5 minutes. But here's the big caveat that people don't always like to say. It still takes a lot of time. Like, I was writing a one pager about endorsing this not for profit that I really think is doing a great job. And, it would have taken me 5 hours and it wouldn't have been as good. I would have spent a half a day writing this long, this one pager. And with ChatGPT, it still took a couple hours because it's still like, first of all, ChatGPT is always getting it wrong. It has this way of sounding this like kind of milk toast, middle of the line thing, and that's not always good. But obviously, huge, huge time saver. And like I said, not only did I write it faster, it really ended up coming out quite a bit better. It's just the writing is clean. I'll just quickly say that when ChatGPT came out, the first thing that it did that was so powerful is that I'm a good content editor. I have good ideas. I'm a very creative person, but my writing didn't have that final polish. And for years and years and years, I always had to have an editor. I had a friend, I had somebody I used to pay, and I was like, can you just look it over and clean this up? And the day ChatGPT got big, I was like, oh my gosh, these people are fired. I literally did not need that anymore. And so when we look at job loss, like if your job is that you're not the creative person and you just clean up copy, you might want to look at a different way of doing business because that's what's really wiping out. Okay, but what it also needs when you start using this thing with the new project, you realize that it needs subfolders because, like, so for the foundation, like I wish this was a folder where I could just do like everything related to fundraising. Like in the future, I'm sure ChatGPT is going to have folders, and it would be like, then so you've got the Dusoma Foundation, my not-for-profit. Then you'd have a folder that says fundraising, and it would be you'd have one subfolder that's like fundraising strategy, and then fundraising copy, and then like emails to partners, and it would all be organized. And then your prompt would be, hey, based on the email that we wrote to Highest, write one to this other organization. And we'll talk about like mail merge on steroids and stuff like that. So that tip is absolutely right on. Invest, and like I said, use ChatGPT for absolutely everything, and then you'll sort of have this brain, what we call synthetic memory or synthetic organizational memory, which means you've sort of taught it everything about it. And one other powerful example I'll give is that, so not only did I use this to build the website, have it create like mock-ups, it's got a Canva plugin, so I can just, have it come up with a rough Canva editable, thing for social media and stuff like that. So it's quite powerful. Okay. So, but now let's get into the other ones, and I'm going to talk a little bit about throwing shade because I'll just explain this in a minute. So, if you've been watching South Park this season, 2025, these guys clearly love and use ChatGPT all the time. And they have a really good one with this character who's like thinking about his business, and he has ChatGPT come up with this business. And, it makes fun of the whole thing that like, ChatGPT, this thing they call sycophancy, which is just, flattering you, telling you every idea is incredible. There was a famous thing on the internet that somebody said, hey, I want to have a business where I have people with jars and then people with lids, and they all get together and match the lids to the jars. Obviously, the stupidest idea ever. And, ChatGPT was like, that's brilliant, and it's like, no, it's not. And so the whole episode is making fun of that because, it really can be dangerous. And if we look at the single, maybe worst thing about ChatGPT for business owners, is this magical thinking that is just cheering you on. And I have a thing with my AI where I can toggle off the magical thinking, and it just says, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. And I just want to say, like, if you think about using ChatGPT for fundraising, the place it took me to is that we did have a campaign. It wasn't successful. And, after it was done, I was like asking ChatGPT, like, where'd this go wrong? Why didn't we, why weren't we successful? And then it says, well, have you tried this and this and this? And I'm like, really? Do you really think we didn't try those things? And so you have to remember that the whole technology is about the average. So all it's ever going to help you do is do things the way every other single person is being told to do it. So remember, this is something that's giving the exact same advice to you that it's giving to 700 million other people. So be very careful, like be very cognizant. And then that's why this is called ChatGPT and the human resistance, because at the end of the day, you can use your creativity and all your brilliant ideas, and you can be unique, and you can be feral, and you can be a wild card, and you can be amazingly creative, and it can help you work better and faster, just like I do with the emails. But it's not going to come up with a unique idea that's going to stand out in the marketplace. It's only going to help you do it like everybody else is doing it. So that's throwing shade part one. Then I want to talk about, I keep using this as a metaphor, and I'm finally like building this in and talking about this. So if you go on YouTube and you look up Saturday Night Live alien abduction, I love this because it's this Kathy Rafferty character played by Katie McKinnon, and it's all these people, and they've been abducted by aliens. The government is interviewing them, and the character on the right is like, I saw a beautiful being in a calming blue light. And then they're like, how about you, Miss Rafferty? And she's like, wow, what floor were you on? She's like, I woke up to 40 gray aliens who watched me pee in a steel bowl. I was clearly not working with the top brass. And I'm like laughing out loud. And that's what I feel like. It's like all these people are like, I use ChatGPT and it launched my business. And I'm like, for us, not so much. Like, we just got totally defunded. All of us working in Africa, all of us in the DEI space, like, it's not going good for us. 2025 was a brutal, brutal year. And not only did ChatGPT not really understand the year, it certainly didn't help us, think creatively about how to get out of this mess. It just kind of drew on like old thinking. So, on to that, let's talk about her next tip. Month two, automate time drains. So again, emails take up 20% of the average workday. Again, you can pause this and read this. And so her prompt is, based on what you know about my business, let's identify and automate my biggest time wasters. Yeah, I don't know. Like, for all of us who are scrambling, and especially if those of us who are, just getting absolutely pummeled, like the alien lady, like it didn't work for us. We're not in a routine enough where we can just be like, automate, automate, automate. We are still trying to figure out the strategy. We're still trying to figure out like how to stop losing, and how to like have this stuff actually work. So my equivalent is write authentic emails faster. And kind of like I said before, I put in these very messy notes, and I say, this email draft is a mess. First, let's reorganize the ideas, you know, based on what I'm trying to say. Then let's wordsmith, ask me clarifying questions about what I'm trying to accomplish. So that's kind of my equivalent prompt. Okay, month three, she says, amplify your best work. And then I just said, agreed. I'm just in preview mode, by the way. And one thing, if I just can say, like, and you can skip 30 seconds and not watch this part, but like, when I make this video, I really wish there was some technology. Even this little unproduced video, did take me a few hours, and then I'm going to edit it a little bit. It would be great if there was something that really did automate this stuff. But anyway. So amplify your work. So she says, take your best case study, and then again, you can pause it and you can read it. Again, what you know about my audience, multiply my content output. So that's really great. Like, yes, and that's a great example of like, this was a partnership that worked, blah, blah, blah. Okay, next. Okay. Next month, build measurement systems that matter. Data doesn't lie, and then create a comprehensive AI impact measurement system. Again, going back to the alien abduction and Kathy Rafferty reality, like every day is a scramble to stay afloat. You can't train AI on your failures. You can have it analyze your failures, and I recommend you do that if you're having problems. But we are in this crazy year where like the aliens did just kind of toss us out of the hatch. And as somebody once said, and I've said 100 times this year, as much as we expected the worst, this is worse than we expected. So unless so if you're doing great and you're like Jodie Cook and you're writing for Forbes and you got more clients than you know what to do with, she's at that level. But for those of us who are not, like, at a set and forget, automation place like that, no, we still, and again, but that's why it's called human resistance, because that's the human ingenuity. Okay. Almost done. We're on slide 13 out of 15. Okay, 100% agree on this one. Using ChatGPT is a mindset. Absolutely. And this is when I teach and I coach myself. So I'm just going to, again, you can read this, but it literally, when people say like, oh, you use ChatGPT all the time, people said to ask you how to do it, we want to do a class, like this org I'm working with, they did this group, they had this ChatGPT class, and then when the kids or the people graduated, they still kind of weren't able to get a job. And they were like, the whole thing was like, we teach people ChatGPT, then they go on Upwork and they get jobs, and it's just not working. And I was like, well, again, that's where the whole like criticism thing is powerful, because let's all just stop, and anybody, I've been using Upwork for software development and everything with developers for about 15 years. When Upwork was pretty new, and it was pretty stellar. And a couple things, Upwork is getting worse and worse and worse. And then it's getting worse and worse and worse for people who all have the same idea. Again, like go on Upwork and try to grab some stuff. I was actually helping a refugee and saying, hey, I'm going to show you how people get on Upwork and get work. And it was kind of awful. Like, the first thing I did is I saw some job postings that looked interesting. Like, I switched and got a different, like a job seeker profile on Upwork and not a boss person profile. And I mean, immediately these things were like scams. They were like, send us $70 to get the project going, and just, I was like, this is bad. And then there were ones that were clearly like ChatGPT bait. It was like, take our user manual and turn it into an online video, thing. Like, so everybody's going to be like, oh, I can use ChatGPT for that one. And of course, that one was just a scam. Everybody's figured out that don't need to pay a human to do that manually. Okay, so second to last, inbox zero, launch your 90-day AI transportation, ChatGPT prompts to plan. My goal is not an inactive inbox. Again, like if you're, she's in a set and forget thing and not in like a kind of startup kicking it off strategy thing. So that one like didn't resonate. So anyway, the next class, I'm going to kind of take this and make this very, very specific about, this is my next guest of how to do fundraising, how to rethink it, how to redo a strategy. And so the big things that we say is Marla AI, which is my umbrella term for everything with AI, from our own software systems to just the way I use ChatGPT to the future of our development. But we're talking about Marla for money, for power, and for justice. And we're really at a point where people just, that first one is money, because without money, it's very, very difficult to get power. And without power, it's very, very difficult to get justice and make this world better. And so when we look at something like how do we help people who work in cobalt mines in Africa, all the cobalt's being extracted and none goes back to the people. You've got child labor, you've got bad mining companies who are abusing people, and then you've got people losing in court. So when we start thinking about how can ChatGPT change the world for the better, reduce poverty, it's not going to be as simple as a few prompts. It's going to get down to, how do we break down these systems? Like what's happening in court when, the little guy, the miners in that town go up against a giant mining company and say, people died, it wasn't safe, you had child labor, and, they lost the case. They said they didn't have enough evidence. So like when we look at how can AI start to do stuff like that, I wish it was just a few little prompts. But anyway, that's going to be what we talk about in future episodes. Okay, thank you for watching.